accepted into a group of entirely men to portray her paintings, and she was not only accepted into that group, but she was widely renowned for her skills. Beginning with a brief history of Miss Cassatt. She was born to the son of a Pittsburgh banker and was very wealthy and lived a life of leisure as a child. She spent some of her adolescence in Europe, returned to Pennsylvania, and she was in the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, in which she received much of her formal training, or her early formal training. Something she realized at a young age in Pennsylvania was that the place to pursue fine arts was not America. In fact, it was Europe. So as a young woman, she traveled to Europe once again to pursue her academic art career, in which she began in Paris, but unfortunately, due to the stigmas of the time, she was not allowed to enroll in the Paris Art Academy, the city's art academy. So she hired a private tutor and worked on the forms and copying of various famous artists around Europe. She did some extensive traveling throughout Italy, Spain, and Portugal, I believe. And she returned stateside in 1870 at the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War, but soon returned in order to further pursue her career in art after a bout of depression and staying away from art in the Americas. Now, while my art is unfortunately on tour while we're here at the MFA, on my handout, the front page is the piece that I chose. It's Mary Cassatt's In the Loge. The name was originally in French, but obviously we translated it to English. Now, in the Loge, we have a portrait of her sister, Lydia, in fact. And this is very important painting because it shows the new era of woman, particularly in Paris, and the modern woman which was coming about around this time. And Paris was the center of culture for Europe, particularly, and the place where culture manifested itself the most was probably in the theater and the opera, where patrons would show off not only their class, they would show off their fashion and their new styles, and it was very much a place where the seeing culture was very important. You went there to see and to be seen, not only to see the production that was going on in the opera or the theater, but to see the people that were there and the styles that they were adapting. Mary and her sisters frequently perused magazines and shopped the streets and explored many of the liberties that women were now being able to explore. So comparing some of her works to and her style to other artists would be other impressionists in the group that she was invited into by Degas in 1877, and Degas, Renoir. Many of these artists she highly admired, and in fact they admired her back. Now when we look at, in comparison, the two images, you'll notice that Mary Cassatt's image of her sister Lydia really only is trying to focus on the woman herself. And if you notice, she's not looking at you, the viewer. She's in fact looking at another audience member. If it were in color, you'd know that the lights were on in the opera, and that she most likely is viewing across to see someone else. And if you look in the background here, there's a gentleman who's leaning over, and he also has a pair of seeing spectacles, seeing glasses, and he is supposedly gazing at her. And so the viewer is trapped in between the gaze of Lydia staring off into the crowd and the man staring at her, and we're looking at her as well. So we are actively involved in the seeing culture of the opera house. Now, in La Loge by Renoir, which is also one we see both patrons dressed in high class, very fancy. They both have the seeing spectacles, and the man is kind of reclined in a more relaxed position, viewing clearly up, not at the stage, and he's looking at another attendee, most likely a woman. And we kind of see by Renoir's depiction on her face that she almost knows that she's there to be looked at, and she's has a low-cut dress on. She's it's almost an objectifying male perspective. Now going back to another piece by Mary Cassatt, the next, The Loge, I'm not entirely positive who the subjects were, but they could be sisters, they could be good friends, and they're most likely attending a matinee performance, which the matinees were around this 1870s was the first time a matinee was really popularized, and this was the venue where women and young ladies could go on their own without being chaperoned, as the night events and the main shows where you required a chaperone. You see here these two women. Again, Cassatt doesn't really like to break the fourth wall and bring the subject's gaze directly to the viewers. So you notice that most likely they are watching the opera and looking down, and you kind of see they're almost very involved, interested, and engaged in what's going on. And it speaks to the culture and the newly emerging understanding of women in popular culture. Now, switching gears a little bit, we move to another Cassatt that focuses on a subject that she is renowned for focusing on. Is in fact one of the only artists that we see really exploiting mother and child as her focus of many of her artworks. This is most likely one of her most famous paintings. It's called The Bath, originally L'Enfant des Toilettes in French. It's a mother washing her daughter's feet particularly, and this is revered as a masterpiece because of her use of complementing colors in the mother and child and their opposing gaze. She's kind of on her lap. It's a very realistic depiction of mother and child, and one that often is not looked upon in fine art. With the color, you can see the attention to detail that Cassatt paid was with the mother's washing her foot, and you're applying pressure when you're washing the foot, and the child is almost mimicking the pressure and the hand motions of the mother on her own leg. So it was an interesting perspective. Moving again to another Impressionist painter, that two-way street of admiration from Degas to Cassatt. In this painting, we also see it is in the Loge Opera House in Paris, and it's a rear view. It's kind of difficult to make out in the print, but it's a woman sitting, and you're looking almost over her shoulder, over her breast, to see her holding a fan, and in her hand a pair of seeing spectacles. And then you see the performance on stage as she's most likely very close. And this is again a male artist, Edward Degas, and he's portraying both the seeing of the performance and the culture, and also the spectacle of the woman at the opera and her in her pomp and her way of seeing the seeing spectacles. Another photo that I thought was good to show the contrast between Cassatt's image of women and the male Impressionist image of women is this Manet that was, it's called At the Bar, Folies Berger, and that's actually a nightclub in Paris, and which also speaks to the rise of popular culture and nightlife and things that we associate with today. The background is actually a reflection of a mirror behind a bar, and we see this look of disgust on her face as her male patron, which you can see vaguely in the reflection, stands and orders a drink and in essence objectifies her and looks at her, what she's wearing, how revealing it is, her pretty face possibly, and several other things. And you look into the background and with more detail, while it is an impressionist painting, you can still see the fashion and the trends that were being exhibited in the back. And if you look closely, there's a woman sitting above one of the bottles who is also using a pair of seeing spectacles to look out onto the crowd, most likely to peruse the dresses and the attire of some of the patrons at this nightclub. Again, Mary Cassatt focused on is unique because of her focus on women, and she brought to light a lot of themes and a lot of scenarios that most men impressionists and most male artists would not even know of. She obviously was a woman and was involved in the spheres that women carry themselves in. And as a woman of high class and of money, she rarely had inappropriate encounters with men. Not necessarily inappropriate, but just her daily encounters with men were much more structured. And in one of the readings that I read, they commented on her focus primarily on women, and due to her lack of encounters in the male sphere.